Hello, everybody. My name is Fable, and welcome to today's 12 FPS. With me today is.
Hey, it's me, Artist of Obsessions, also known as Obby, and yeah, hi, welcome.
Hello. It's been a bit of a silly. It's been a bit silly today, so if. I'm hoping we can stay on track. I don't have like a super big plan, but obviously we have a plan, but otherwise.
Yeah,
If things get
just like
silly.
just like the loosest of ideas.
Yeah, and if things get silly, it's
Yeah,
not our fault. Or it is, but we're not taking
yeah.
I'm not taking responsibility. Obby, you can take responsibility if you want, but I'm not.
Silly, silly.
Anyways, so I imagine this FPS probably takes place maybe a couple hours at most.
Real quick, we should probably mention who we're playing.
Oh yeah, that's a
Yes,
good point. That's a marvelous point.
information.
Today I'm playing Antler, aka the Antlered King, who's recently taken over a place called Ruindal, an old ruins in the upper corners of the Jiznep Kingdom.
Yep.
That's who
And
I'm playing.
I am going to be playing Ruby Red, a funky little kid who happens to be vibing at Ruindoll sometimes. Why is
Sometimes.
she there? Who knows? She thinks it's neat.
It is pretty neat. It is pretty neat. An antler tolerates her existence in Ruindal as long as she's willing to do a bit of work for him. Uh, but anyways, I
Ah,
imagine.
yes, work.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
something a child is eager to do.
it's simple work. I mean, she can blow stuff up. He could probably find some use for that. Anyways, so I imagine this FPS taking place, maybe a couple hours, maybe a day at most after the events of Travel in Tombs. After you guys beat
Yeah,
up a dragon and effectively won the
yeah,
ruins. So what's
yeah.
so what's Ruby doing?
Ruins. Our home now.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. Well, I think on this particular day, Ruby's probably found like a relatively dry, sunny spot in the ruins, and it's just like, sitting against a wall, kind of writing what looks like a little letter on a piece of paper, as like Oliver is sitting next to her, just kind of snoozing.
She's writing a letter.
They're just vibing. Yeah,
Oh, she's writing a letter? I think I can guess too.
she is.
That's cute.
What?
Uh, no, I'm saying that's cute.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So probably around then, you start to hear, he's not been avoiding any of the others, or per se you. He's just been walking around the ruins, and I'm pretty sure been hearing him walking around, because you can hear his footsteps and then the clack of his staff on the floor.
Yeah. The step clonk from before.
Yeah, pretty much. Step clunk,
Yeah.
step clunk. He's just been quiet. He's just been quietly walking around, and I think occasionally he'll pass by you because either he has to double back or just something as he's just getting a lay of the land.
Yeah. I think like every once in a while when he passes by, like Ruby just kind of glances up to him. She doesn't really seem to be interested in engaging conversation. She's just vibing by herself.
I don't think Antler's particularly interested in conversation either. At least for the first couple times he's passing by. But eventually he finishes up. He's done enough walking around, and eventually he does need to address the elephant in the room. So eventually, Ruby, you feel a shadow looming over you, and the steps have stopped. You know how villains
Uh,
do. You know how villains do
yeah,
the loom.
the loom.
Yeah.
I think Ruby just kind of like casually looks up and gives him a cheeky little wave. While meanwhile Oliver has like lifted up his head and immediately go, "Okay, all right, it is time to shrink back behind Ruby."
Antler Antler makes no kind of movement to indicate how he's feeling towards Ruby. But there's it's definitely disinterest at least with Oliver because he's definitely not looking at the pig. But he's looking down at Ruby and he looks down at what she's writing. And he goes, "Writing letters to home, I would assume."
Ruby just kind of shrugs. Like, and like she debates for a second before she shakes her head, like to say as just a simple nah, it's not to home.
Hmm. I do. I do not know the particulars of present-day society, but I do not recall real kind children often wandering Inkwell on their own.
Hmm. I don't think Ruby really says anything. She just kind of looks at him weirdly before going back to writing her letter.
Hmm. I'm trying to think of what he would say.
You're valid.
Because I think he just watches her for a sec, because he's not used to talking to children.
Especially a child who can't talk.
Yeah, yeah. Usually children do talk. It's like the easy thing about kids is that they'll take up the conversation very easily. But this is not what's happening. So you and you do. Mm, Peck, give me a sec. Oh, Antler's not one to try and make cool with the kids, but he's got to. So, okay. He watches her write for a little bit before finally. So you do intend to stay here, is that correct?
Ruby just looks up at him for a bit before she nods.
Hmm.
And then she actually puts down her paper and her pencil and she goes and she signs. I don't really have much other place to go.
And she is signing in cartoon sign language, yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
specifically cartoon sign.
Antler Ruby sees Antler tilt his head. I am not familiar with those signs. And he raises his own hands and signs something back, but Ruby doesn't recognize it because it is uh it is cartoon sign language. You think it's Toonish, but it's not any signs you recognize.
Yeah, yeah. I think like Ruby's just sitting there trying to like comprehend what the heck he's saying, and there's just nothing.
Hmm. Are you speaking in real kind sign language, or are you speaking in Toonkind sign language?
Ruby signs Toonkind,
Hmm.
just like spelling each letter out with her fingers.
I'm not sure. You know what? I'm gonna make a roll to see if I'm gonna make an intelligence roll because in my mind the Toonkind sign language would probably have a different alphabet as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Actually, you know what? Better idea. Because I don't think a roll would help Antler in this case. Instead, he's gonna go. How about this? Hold up one finger for real kind, and two for Toon language, sign language. I can talk.
Ruby just holds up a two.
I see. It appears we know two different Toon sign languages. Now I imagine the one you know is the most recent. Hmm. How about this then? And then he changes the sign again, and it looks a lot more. It's very less Toonish, but again, you probably Ruby wouldn't know it because
Yep.
it is real kind sign language, but
Yeah. Ruby does not understand, but she does look interested now.
is
Like you could roll insight if you wanted,
yeah.
but
I'm gonna roll insight for this because it's D&D and we gotta make rolls. It's a 9.
yeah, she looks interested. Not sure why she's suddenly interested, but she looks interested.
I think Antler's gonna continue signing in real kind sign, as he talks. I am familiar with I would imagine real kind sign language has not changed much from my time. I would hope. Do you understand what I am saying?
And then Ruby signs, well, yeah, because you're talking.
And he doesn't understand what she's signing.
Oh my gosh. I think at this point, Oliver from behind Ruby kind of pipes up because he's supposed to be the translator. He's just very nervous. And he just kind of clears his little throat and he's like, well, she's saying that she does understand you because, well, you are speaking.
But
um,
does she understand what I am signing?
they kind of share a look before Oliver shakes his head. No, no. She only knows the cartoon sign language.
You're telling me a real kind girl only knows Toon sign language and not real kind.
They both just sort of nod.
Roll insight.
Insight. Okay, I'm gonna do it for both Ruby and Oliver. That's Ruby's. And that's Oliver.
As far as either of you know, Antler just sighs. And I think what he's going to do is sweep his cloak around him a bit before moving to the spot beside Ruby, still giving plenty of space between them because he's not interested in sitting close, but he is going to sit down beside her. All right then. If you are going to be living here, and if you are going to be in my service, we need to be able to communicate properly, not through second hand of your animal friend. So this
Oliver, like, for a second looks like he wants to say something before he shuts himself up.
Yeah, Antler pointedly looks at Oliver when he says animal friend. I don't know if Oliver wants to make another insight or not.
Oh, he will. He's very nervous.
Yeah, go ahead. That's a 7. You can't, you get nothing. It's just dark blackness in that hood. You get nothing from this guy, Oliver, I'm sorry.
Okay, Oliver's just going to shut up and sit down next to Ruby.
So here is what is going to happen. I am going to show you real kind sign language, and you are going to show me Toonkind sign language. Sound fair?
Ruby thinks for a bit before she nods.
Very well. We'll start with the alphabet. And I want to make something very clear to the audience, and I feel bad about this, but it's just I haven't taken any classes. I don't know any sign language, and I feel bad about that.
Neither do
I know a couple of signs. I know how to insult someone, and I know how to say hello and thank you, and that's about it. That's my knowledge on sign language. That's all I got. So I'm just gonna say, how about we make a roll and see how well these two do in, I guess, either teaching each other or, yeah, let's say how good they do at teaching the other, because I feel like they both understand the basics of sign language. That that it's just a case of learning new signs.
Yeah. Learning things. Ruby loves learning things. Yeah. Learning things good.
Yeah. Though I learned a fascinating... I want to say intelligence?
Yes. Intelligence.
I learned a fascinating thing about sign language, though, is that sign language has kind of its form of accents.
Ooh, really?
Kind of. You know, like how someone does a sign. I could be wrong about this. It was something I had read about, that certain sign languages, not certain sign languages, but sign language itself, frickin', I was going somewhere with it, but I can't...
It would make sense, because, like, learning sign language in certain areas would change, like, depending on, like, what lingo is around and stuff.
Yeah. It's lingo, and it's also just how the hand moves when it's doing the sign as well.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. Anyways, intelligence. Let's just do straight intelligence.
Straight intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a 21. Ruby. Ruby, you catch on very quickly to real kind sign language.
Nice.
10. Antler's having a bit more trouble. You see him like slipping into the older sign, into the older cartoon sign that you don't recognize.
Hmm.
And he's
Hmm.
and he makes a growling sound each time he does it because he catches himself doing it.
Hmm. I think like Ruby like takes note of this kind of like in her head, just like, oh, there is an older version and a newer version. And like she just makes a mental note of that before she she doesn't have a hammer space, so I wonder if she has this. Let me look in her pack.
Oh, I'm
'Cause
curious. I'm a curious now.
uh gotta look up the pack on D&D stuff cuz you don't know what is in them. Okay, there's no pencil and paper.
Aw. Wait, but she has
That's
the letters. She was writing
she does
letters.
the letters are specifically a Glorp's item thing that she was writing on.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
And like
roll.
she
I'm gonna roll insight to see if Antler can tell what she is trying to do. 15. I would say that does it.
Mhm.
Cool. So
Yeah. Like she's like rooting through her picnic basket and like pulling out random items and like digging through. And she's like looking more frustrated as she realizes she does not in fact have pencil and paper.
I think with that 2, that just that just does it. And I think Antler watches this for maybe a minute or two, and so he reaches into his he's placed his staff to be leaning on the stone wall beside him, uh, and he reaches into his robe for a moment, pulls out a very long scroll of paper, and it looks very old. And he hands it to Ruby, and then he reaches in again and pulls out a little inkwell with a feather pen
Aw.
because he's old.
This is good. This is good.
Is this
I think
what you are requiring?
Ruby looks up from her picnic basket and she nods before she takes both the items and then really quickly sets them down, signs thank you, and then picks them back up.
Hmm.
And then what she's doing is that she's essentially using the paper to write a little cheat sheet.
Oh, for
Yeah.
new kind sign or old kind sign?
Uh, I
New
think she's
kind, old
trying to
kind,
do
bleh.
both. I think she wants to try to do both. At first, she's doing the new kind because that's the one she's more familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I roll insight again to see if Antler catches on, or is it painfully obvious?
uh, I think like the fact that she's writing the newer ones would be more obvious, but like the older ones might be more insight wise as she's like trying to remember them.
I think
If that makes sense. Or maybe the vice versa. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of how Antler would feel about the idea of needing a cheat sheet. I don't know if this would hurt his pride or not.
She's trying.
You know what,
Look, this is
Antler's
how you learn. This is how you learn. This is
I'm
you make cheat sheets and you
Antler's old though, so I think he's gonna lean back a little bit and give a small huff to be like, I do not require a sheet. I simply require practice.
Ruby gives him a look.
Antler looks black. The blackness within his hood looks back, unmoving.
And then like Ruby just rolls her eyes and she puts down the things to sign again and she's like, "Look, you have to there's other ways you can take notes to learn and stuff. You if you cuz like I'm trying to describe cuz like part of like the learning process is that you have to like take notes and muscle memory and whatnot. And like Ruby's using the cheat sheet so it'll be easier to do that. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Antler just puts his hands in both sleeves and just sits there and waits. Doesn't say anything. He growls a little bit, but that's about it.
uh, Ruby just rolls her eyes again before she goes back to like writing down what she can. And then once she's done, she sets the inkwell in, like the quill into the inkwell, and then sets it on the ground before turning the scroll back towards Antler.
I'm sorry, I blanked for a second. What did you say?
She's just finishing up the what she's writing on the scroll before handing it back to Antler.
Antler stares at it for a bit. He doesn't move. He stares at it for a bit before he sighs again, takes his hands out of his sleeves, and takes the paper and looks at it. Your handwriting could use some work.
And then like she she signs back, "Forgive me, I'm not exactly used to writing with a feather." Just like in the sassiest looking expression possible.
What do people write with these days, then, if not feathers? He says this as
She holds
he's...
up her
Hmm?
she like picks up her pencil from her picnic basket and holds it up to him.
Antler looks at it and just goes, "What is that?"
And she does the alphabet for pencil.
Antler will hold out his hand for it. He won't take it, but he will hold out his hand.
uh Ruby just kind of like tilts her head before she gives it to him.
Antler just inspects it for a bit. And I'm gonna say it for flavor, but Ruby can roll insight if you want. But I don't think he's seen a pencil before. I think any kind of writing he's ever done has been with a pen and ink, a feather pen and ink. Well, he's old. It's a one. It's a one.
Well, for Ruby, pencils are a thing. You know, they've been around for a while. She may not understand that they haven't been in the past.
I don't think he's unfamiliar with graphite. I think he's just unfamiliar with that. It's like graphite surrounded by wood with a little bit of rubber at the end. What? All right, this is whatever. And he'll slowly just hand it back to her. And he just goes,
Ruby just takes it back.
"Well, I suppose I will have to get used to the changes of this time." He'll go back to looking at the paper that she wrote up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he says much else. I think now he's just looking at that.
Yeah, that's valid. I think Ruby just kind of is waiting patiently at the side, just absolutely petting Oliver's head.
I think as he's, after a little while of looking at it, he doesn't look away from the paper, but he says, "I should be inclined to ask what brings a child to ruins. I believe I've said this before. And I should be inclined to ask the situation involving whoever is taking care of you. Or should be."
And then Ruby just kind of gets like an unimpressed look, and she signs, "I take care of myself."
In my experience, it's not a wise decision to leave children on their own. But I don't care particularly, as long as you are able to do what I require of you. And he will roll up the paper and slide it into his sleeve. And he will also take his ink and feather pen back, since she obviously doesn't need it.
And like Ruby has just been like kind of watching him do all this, just kind of relatively blankly. So like she doesn't seem particularly inclined towards any particular emotion. And then she very abruptly signs, "How old are you?" Just in the most blunt out of nowhere question.
I think as Antler was was doing this, he wasn't looking directly at her, but as he sees the sign, he does look directly at her. And again, you're gonna need to roll insight to tell what he's feeling from that question.
13.
13. I'm gonna say I'm gonna, you know what? It's not. I'm gonna say you don't get the sense that he's offended, but you get the sense that no one's really asked him yet about his age. Uh, and he's quiet for a bit again. You get the sense that this is gonna be a running theme with this guy. Um, as he slowly puts his hands in his sleeves again and sits back. Hmm, that would, well, that would depend. Compare these ruins here, from what I've been able to gather, are over 200 years old. So I am at least that old. But it would depend on many other things. So unfortunately, I cannot give you an exact age. Let us just say I am old. I am much older than this inkwell that you are familiar with. I imagine no, I did not imagine. I know. I was here long before this one came into existence.
I think I want Ruby to roll history for that, actually, because I want to know if she's familiar with what he's referring to.
Okay. We did do a history before, and you are familiar, and Ruby is familiar with the myth of the Antlered King.
But, like, I want to know specifically if she's familiar with the concept of older inkwells that are no longer in existence, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. I don't know. That's a
It's
20.
20.
That's a 20. I feel like
Okay.
this is a question for Al, because this does for anyone who doesn't watch Silver Screen or anything, I am referring to any older inkwells. I am referring to basically inkwells that were before erasure events happened, which basically just wiped out Inkwell, for anyone who's...
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So it's...
Because arguably, Ruby is from Faruma, so maybe if she did, like, find history books there, she would have, like, heard from there that there were older versions of Inkwell. They're just no longer in existence, if that makes sense.
It would depend on how much
At least that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, as my understanding as well. Well, because Faruma did not get any erasure, so any history that existed before, post erasure, would still be in Faruma. So I would say for Ruby, you probably... Yeah.
Thank you, Uni.
Thank you, Uni. Thank you, Uni. Yeah, Uni, for anyone listening, Uni is just typed, it's fair to say Faruma native would know. So yeah, Abby, you definitely recall from the books that you've read just, like, conflicting historical events, I think.
Yeah.
I think, because some books would talk about one kind of Inkwell, then other books would talk about a different Inkwell, and I don't know if Faruma would ever have any books on the erasure itself, but there are definitely different Inkwells than the one that there is today, or even one that was 200 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Ruby is taking mental notes with this information. I think I'm gonna roll another intelligence.
All right.
Just to see if, like, she can connect some dots that are in my head, but I want to see if she can come up with them.
Oh. 24. Ruby,
wow.
You smart cookie.
Ruby is in fact a smart cookie.
She's very smart.
Like, she's just thinking to herself, and she asks, well, if you're so old, then what kind of... Do you know, like, the older forms of, like, these languages? Like, if that makes sense?
Antler looks at the signs real quick and takes a second. Yes, I know. I am familiar with many languages, both from real-kind lands and, well, my Inkwell, including the sign language of that time, and he starts doing a couple of the older Toonie signs.
Ruby just has like, you know, like those little grins that you get when you have like an idea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Ruby has an idea.
Antler
And she's
will.
like, I think she's gonna sign. I haven't met anyone as old as you, so I don't think anyone else would know older languages like you do, if that makes sense.
There is logic to that, yes. And I think I'm gonna roll an intelligence to see if Antler catches on to what she's getting at. 18, yeah. Antler tilts his head in some interest, like, okay. I think he's starting to get what she's getting at.
Secret codes. Secret codes.
Well, seeing as you're capable of picking up on signs rather quickly, I imagine this next lesson will be rather short.
Ruby preens at that. She just looks so pleased with herself.
You will need to improve your handwriting, though. This is a requirement. If you are to continue
Ruby just
being
blows a raspberry.
Antler just blankly looks at her. Be upset about it if you like. Nonetheless, you will need to be able to write properly if we need to write code. If we need to write the signs on paper again.
Yeah, Ruby just kind of nods like, yeah, you have a point.
He knows he has a point. He's aware. So I think the next couple minutes will be Antler teaching Ruby the very old kind of cartoon sign language.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't know if you want to roll again to see how well that goes.
Yeah, I could roll again.
Yeah.
Just straight intelligence.
Yeah.
13. It's not going as well as it was before. Ruby got excited, but there's some like really tricky ones that she's stuck on.
I think with that in mind, Antler will himself go ahead and, because he's realizing that way, because Toonkind language, there's some signs that are, like, physically difficult for a real kind.
Yeah, because real kind can't bend the same way students do.
Yeah. So I think for, like, the physically difficult signs, he will amend those and simply, you do not have to bend your arm that far for that sign. We can make it so it is physically possible for you to do. And hopefully not dislocate your shoulder in the process. Also, since you were kind enough to give me a cheat sheet, as it were. And let me roll hammer space again, so he can get... D20, no, I need a D10. 4. Yeah, he pulls out another very old scroll of paper and ink, feather pen, and he will start writing down a cheat sheet for Ruby. In much nicer and very pristine handwriting, I should say. In a very clear cursive.
Ah, cursive.
Yep. He's
Luckily,
old.
Ruby knows cursive.
He's old, and when you're old, you write in cursive. That's the logic. That's the Toon logic here. If you're old, you write in cursive. But it's very nice cursive, so you can read it and it's pleasant to look at.
I'm just like, could you roll insight just for fun?
Sure. It's D&D. We roll insight here. What's my insight? There it is. 22!
Ruby is displeased that she needs a cheat sheet.
Antler can understand.
Much in the same way Antler was earlier.
Antler can understand the feeling. And I think because of that, he actually... No. neither of us are particularly happy about this, but it is it cannot be helped. As he rolls it up and hands it to her.
Ruby just blows another raspberry as she takes the scroll and starts looking over the signs that he wrote down. Yeah.
He has a feeling that these raspberries and this brave show of insolence towards him is going to be a common thing to happen.
Oh, it's gonna be pretty common. Ruby is 13 and she does not care.
I think because Antler's not a nice he's not a nice dude, so I'm just gonna make a roll for something real quick.
Oh boy.
Sorry. That's an 8. Oh man. Yes. Ruby, you have this I was rolling intimidation and it didn't go well.
Oh.
But Antler basically looms over Ruby a bit because he is tall and he's gonna use that to his advantage, and he's a villain dude, so he's not nice. But he basically goes, and for future reference, you will be mindful of your behavior in my presence. Is that clear? And it's an 8, so I guess Ruby is probably seen scarier things. I don't know.
Oh, she's seen scarier. I mean, what? Yeah. Ruby just kind of like looks up at him and just makes a face.
I think Antler does that little taken aback thing, like, wait, you're supposed to be scared.
Ruby is 13 and she does not care.
I think because
This is like this very much has vibes of immovable object meets an unstoppable flirt.
Yeah, basically. But Antler's still gonna raise a hand and point sternly at her, like, you will mind your manners, child.
Oh. Ruby totally like mimics what he said in like the most mocking sign language she can master.
Antler leans back, and I'm just gonna make another roll real quick, because I don't think this guy is used to people being rude to him. Okay, that's a 20. He succeeded on the wisdom save, so he is not going to blow up at the child. Instead, he is going to curtly stand up, take his staff in one hand, and he will quietly start walking down the hallway, away from this insolent child that he has taken under his service. This is a terrible idea, he's realizing.
As like Antler's getting up and leaving, Ruby just kind of like looks up from the scroll that she was reading to like watch him go. And like I don't know if you could roll insight while you're leaving.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and do that. Maybe like he can't, because I imagine as he rounds the corner, he takes one more glance back at her. Just to make sure she's not blowing raspberries. That's a 6, Antler.
Well, she is looking at you. she's definitely looking at you. You know, I want to argue advantage because I really, really want this to.
All right. Let's do this one more time. Come on. 23. There we go.
Okay. Like as you're leaving, Ruby is kind of like looking at you in a very specific way. And it's kind of weird when you realize it, but there's very much the sense that she's evaluating you. If that makes sense.
Roll insight.
Ooh.
And do it on I will give you advantage back because you were nice enough to give me advantage. That's a 5. Yeah,
Oh,
roll
boy.
again. 4.
Oh, Ruby.
4.
Please.
No.
All right, let's see if Oliver can save the day. No.
Okay, you know what?
Oliver
No,
did
you know what? You know what? Peck this, because I want to give it to you. And Dice Parser's being mean, frankly. But Ruby, you get the sense that when Antler looks back at you, he's evaluating you right back.
Yes. Evaluation.
They're not quite sure of each other just yet.
But maybe there is something being built there.
Maybe.
Maybe.
They can at least
Just
communicate.
slightly.
They can at least communicate now, and Antler doesn't have to listen to the nervous pig prattle.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, I'm sorry, Oliver. I don't think Antler for both personal reasons and just overall, he doesn't care for nervous people all too much. He doesn't care for Oliver that much. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's valid.
Yeah. Sorry. He's a butt. Antler's a butt.
Antler is, in fact, a butt.
I can't. This was a bit short, but I can't really think of anything else.
Yeah.
Unless you-
Sometimes FPSs are short.
Yeah.
I think just like as an ending scene thing, like Ruby, eventually after she's done reading all her signs and stuff, she goes back to finishing off her letter before she carefully folds it into a paper airplane, and like I've been imagining that they were in the throne room all this time, just kind of off to the side.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
so she kind of like walks up to the center of the room before aiming the airplane up towards the sky and chucks it. And then watches as it sails up out of the ruins and through the air.
Very faithful airplane.
Yeah.
That is a really cool. A really
It
cool
is
object
really
to
cool.
get. All right. I think with that, that is the end of our FPS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just a short little sweet thing,
Yeah.
but will definitely be helpful in the future in terms of communication.
Secret code.
Secret code.
Secret code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secret code that I don't know might get taught to Duster, but definitely will not get taught to Colin because I don't think Antler can stand conversation, let alone teaching this guy.
Gosh, I'm gonna say right now, Ruby's gonna try.
She can try.
Emphasis on try, if only to watch Colin fail hilariously.
Oh, Colin, I'm sorry, buddy. I love Colin, but man, he's just. All right. With that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you
Thank
next
you for
time.
listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.